to build our middle school.
I'm not sure where.
So how are we going to build the community?
Well, this is
Large
Say
crowd.
the same thing.
Must not be anything going around in town.
Okay,
unless it's this is charged.
my makeshift gavel. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to meeting number 3 of the Celebration Education Task Force. It is Monday, December 7th at 7:05 p.m. I'll call this meeting to order. We have quite a few new faces at the table tonight. Welcome. We ought to maybe just go around, if we would start with Sophia, just your name and who you're representing, just quickly.
Sophia Graves, student body president at Celebration High School.
Clyde Wells, Chief Facilities Officer at the school district.
Rhonda Blake, Director of Planning, School District.
Tom Phelps, Deputy Superintendent with the school district.
Bill Lucy from the CBD.
Todd Rimmer from Celebration.
Brian Copley, Celebration Task Force.
Jan Heskett, Celebration Task Force.
Matt Schroeder, Celebration Task Force.
Tom Sonneborg on the task force.
Rebecca Newman, Celebration Task Force.
Tom Tusen, Celebration Task Force.
Jeff McNeil, Celebration Task Force.
Vanessa Winter, Croa.
Jay Wheeler, Osceola County School Board.
Susan?
Susan.
Oh, Susan Kern. I'm the community new manager here in Celebration.
Rose Plitzy, middle school counselor with Osceola County School District here at Celebration K-8 and a resident of Celebration.
Nice to meet you, and thank you, everybody, for coming. Thank you, audience members, for coming. Some new faces. Bill, welcome. You all have the agenda in front of you, I hope. It's a pretty simple agenda tonight with the priority on going over the pros and cons of the alternatives we've already talked about and maybe brainstorming some new ones if they come up, maybe some combinations of those that we've already talked about. That is really the main agenda tonight. Unless there's any suggestions or anything more important, can we just have a consensus to adopt this agenda and go? Any objections? No? Okay. We'll go with this. I'm going to repeat a note about decorum that we talked about last week. It's probably even more important this week because we've got more people. Let's emphasize respect and common courtesy to each other, to the audience, and to the camera. And just to recap a little bit, this is our third meeting. The first meeting was really about organizing our task force and allowing the community to vent a little bit. We did that. Hopefully we've got most of that out of our system now. The second meeting was about the methodology, about how we were going to do this and to start brainstorming alternatives. Tonight is about starting to go through those alternatives and start to write down pros and cons and issues and advantages, disadvantages on the board. Susan Kearns has agreed to be our scribe, so she's going to be hustling tonight. Thank you for doing that, Susan. And like I said, we've got our 7 task force members, we've got our non-voting liaisons, and we've got some invited guests this evening. School board staff that we have already met with, and thank you all for coming. Jay, thank you for coming. Let's keep in mind, this is not the time for too much of what we've already said, for repeating ourselves. It's not time to air old grievances. Tonight is about getting down to work, rolling up the sleeves. Let's just keep our eye on the ball tonight and try to make as much progress as we can. And then just one last note. There will be time for audience participation tonight. Just again, let's do it like we have been. If you're compelled, if you have to say something, just raise your hand. Please don't shout out from the audience because the people on the TV can't hear you. Just raise your hand. I'll try and work you in. Thank you for coming. We want your participation. Let's just do it in a mannerly way. And just keep in mind one thing. This is being taped. If you're compelled to say something, just let your test be, is this the kind of thing that you'd want impressionable young high school people to hear, or maybe your grandmother to hear? So,
Tom,
Or both?
yeah, yes, sir.
can I let people know some of the conversations I've had in the positions where I am and where and why? Is that okay with you?
Sure, please.
I'm going to stand up just because I've been sitting long today.
Do we have a mic?
Oh, I've got it right there. Well, before I get started, I'm also the president of the Celebration High School Booster Club. I've got all the
Do we have
basketball
a mic at the
schedules.
podium?
I don't think we have a mic at the podium.
Celebration High School. I know you all want to come see Celebration High School play basketball. I've also got Booster Club membership information if you're so inclined. First off, for those of you who don't know me, I've represented Celebration on the Osceola School Board since 2002, and I was the one who, how many of you here either have kids or had kids attend the K-8 school? Raise your hands. Okay. And the high school? Raise your hands. Okay. But the K-8 school, just to give you some history, years ago, there was a push at one point, unpopular, to terminate Mrs. Casano from the Celebration K-8 school. I fought to keep Mrs. Casano at the K-8 school because I think she's a great educator, good for the community. It was the right thing to do. Celebration High School IB program, I started that in 2004. I had a staff at the school district who didn't want it. They turned it down in 2005. I had it fully funded. I stayed with it. I fought for it. We've now got it where we've graduated our third or fourth class Celebration High School IB program. So I fought for Celebration schools, and I want Celebration schools to be the best schools in Osceola County, if not in Florida or America. To that end, I inserted myself in some meetings between staff and the Celebration Company as kind of an uninvited guest, but Clyde Wells was kind enough to extend the invitation. Clyde's chief facility officer, great guy, cares about kids, and we get along real well. I attended the meetings. In one of the meetings, I let them know that I was not in support of expanding the K-8 school. Then I met with staff. Deputy Superintendent was in the meeting, Tom Phelps, who's here now. Tom was the AP at the K-8 school. He was the principal at Narcoossee K-8 school. He was making the argument for it. I still wasn't sold on it, but I wanted to see where it would go. They did a presentation. We all know how we got to where we are. Let me tell you why I don't support expanding the K-8 school first, and some other things I don't support and do support. Number one, we've got a campus with 1,500 student stations. And think about a 5, 6, 7-year-old kid going to school. 1,500 student stations is big. If we add, say, 500, 800, 1,000, that's a 2,000 plus student station campus. I don't think that's the best thing for 5, 6, 7-year-old kids. Now, there will be studies that show what can and can't work. I've seen a lot of expert studies along the way also. I know this school. My kids have gone to school here. I know the teachers here. I know this community. There's no upside to expanding the school as far as I'm concerned. Additionally, another thing I do not support, and none of this is a surprise to Tom. Tom and I have had some very candid conversations. Tom and I know each other well. We know each other so well. We've had some disagreements, but we'll talk it through and he'll see it my way, which is what I like about Tom.
We'll see about that.
Anyways, also I want to recognize Ms. Schroeder. We have never worked together before. I appreciate your many years of public service in Congress, and I look forward to working with you on this. It's an honor to be working with you. At the high school, there's people who've made the argument, expand the high school, send 6th graders, 7th graders, 8th graders there, et cetera, and then, make this school a K-5, and that it works beautifully at the School for the Arts. Number one, I do not want to see a great reconfiguration at the high school for a couple reasons. Number one, let's talk about 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. I don't think, and let's talk about 12th graders, I don't want to send an 11 or 12-year-old girl to school every day with 18-year-old boys. I just don't want to do it. Now, people will say it works at the School for the Arts, and it does. It works great there. The School for the Arts, for those of you who don't know, is a magnet school. It's a school where kids apply to get into, they audition, they submit a body of work, and they get accepted, and then they are highly motivated when they're there. There's no athletics there. It is an arts school. Those are special kids, and if they don't keep their grades up, they're going to go to their home's school. So you can't really use that as a benchmark for where it works sending 6 through 12 because it's a special type of student. It really is. So you can't really make that comparison. Now, I was on a conference call. Todd, you were on that call with, you were on the call, Tom, you were on the call, Clyde, the Friday before Thanksgiving. Before that call, I called Clyde. Clyde is our chief facility officer. I said, Clyde, we've got $12.5 million in impact fee money. How much money do you need to build a traditional elementary school? He said, $20 million. I said, how much land do you need? He said, we have 10 acres. He said, we need at least 15, and then that's tight. I said, okay. So right now, all things being equal, we don't know what the developer will or won't contribute right now. We know there's 10 acres, when there's $12.5 million worth of impact fees. I went on that conference call, and I told everyone on that call, I would support if we can get an additional 5 acres of land and $7.5 million in addition to the $12.5 million we're getting now, we'll build you a traditional elementary school, and it's a good day. We'll be good with that. Now, if that doesn't happen, I still support a charter school option because you will get the student stations that you need, you'll get healthy competition, you'll get ball fields, you'll get an extra gym, and the school district will still get $12.5 million or more in impact fees. Now, something that you all don't know, which I did talk to Tom about, there's a statute on the books, 1013.52, that's 1013.52, which allows for, if you've got contiguous school districts, Orange and Osceola, Polk, those are contiguous school districts, and they build a joint school together, the state will pay 20% of the total cost of that school. I was just recently, the reason I'm bringing that up is I had this conversation with a woman named Pam Gould. For those of you who don't know Pam Gould, she is an Orange County School Board member who represents the southwest portion of Orange County. Dr. Phillips, et cetera. Basically, she butts up to 192, Orange County there, and I've got Osceola here. She made it clear they need a relief school for Dr. Phillips, and one of the problems they've got in Orange County that we don't have is whenever they get a school site approved, they've got to get it approved through the county commission. Here we don't necessarily need that. This line's got to be zoned, and they've got a very contentious relationship with the county commission. I said to her, I said, well, what if we did a joint school at 429 and 192, and I brought that up recently with Leonard, and Leonard shared that there was 200 acres available right there, and I didn't know that, so thank you, Leonard. We cornered each other in a Publix. We had a 5-minute conversation that went about 35 minutes, but that's okay. But the point is, so let's do the math on that. So let's say it's $80 million to build a new high school out of the ground at 429 and 192. So the state will come up with 20. That means we got to come up with 30, and Orange has to come up with 30. If I build a charter school here, I got $12.5 million in impact fees, plus I got 1,100 student stations here, and now I need $17.5 million in addition to the 12.5 to bring another 1,500 student stations for us based on a 3,000 student station high school. I'm getting 2,600 student stations for basically unencumbered $17.5 million. I can encumber the $12.5 million. That's a plan that makes a lot of sense to me. Now, I'm not poo-pooing any other plans, but I do not. I want to make it clear because, and I want to. If you've got other alternatives that make sense, as Tom points to them, I'm not close to any of those. But I wanted to let you know where I was with some of these. And Todd, I appreciate you're here, and you're the liaison from your company. I've got a request. Next time, bring somebody who can actually say yes or no also. I understand you've got to bring information back and forth, et cetera, and we love you so much, we want you to bring more people. So please bring more people who can actually, do more than just have you carry the information back and forth. We would appreciate that. And I know that the developer is very interested in a can-do solution, so you'll make that happen, Todd, and I appreciate that.
Unfortunately, those folks are in California, but I'll be sure to pass.
Well, maybe I can make some calls and motivate some people. That'd be good. So we appreciate you being here. But I wanted to let people know where we are. And I brought some information that I got from the school district, from John Davis, relative to the construction cost. This is based on 2013 numbers, in case you don't have these. To build an elementary student station, I've got $20,857. To build a middle school student station, $22,523. High school, $29,255. I've got the impact fee generation rates. You're doing impact fee generation. That's what I got from the district relative to that. I also want to recognize Rose Polizzi for being here. Rose is one of the best educators I know over at the K-8 school. I'm so glad that you're here. She's a wealth of knowledge, and don't let the fact that she looks about 16 throw you off. Rose is spot on, knows what she's talking about, inspires kids every day, motivates kids. I appreciate everybody who's here. I appreciate how much you care about this community, how much you care about your kids, but I wanted people to know where I stood and why now. There's no line in the sand. If you can show me a good reason why I should change my mind, it's okay. There is one other wild card in this. by the time this decision is made, there probably will be a new superintendent. Personally, I think it'd be a really nice gift for me to bring the new superintendent a charter school with 1,100 student stations, $12.5 million, and the prospect of building another school with another county that nobody's been able to get across the finish line in quite some time, but I'm confident that it can be done. So with that said, again, I appreciate you all being here. Tom, will turn the meeting back over to you.
Jay, thank you. Well, your passion is going to fit in right with the rest of us. We do have the pros and cons. We are going to talk about the charter school. It's up there as number 4. Susan, if we could make number 8 this joint school with Orange County, and we'll
And it doesn't have to be a high school. I threw a high school out there because that's where the
treat
need
it
is.
just tonight like the other 7. But before we jump in, maybe just some reports of activity, important activity since our last meeting. We'll just go around. Todd, anything new on the documents you were chasing or otherwise?
We still haven't found the agreement that you recall. We
Okay.
think the only issue exists in that DO. We have
Okay.
gone through, I don't have the document finalized, but we do, based on our calculations, we do comply with the old, Osceola County comp plan and actually exceed it significantly. So any reduction in recreation space at this facility would not put us in non-compliance.
Okay. Could we,
And I'll compile that and send it to you.
okay, good.
Yep.
That's what I was going to ask. Bill, any news from the CDD or any
We haven't had a
requests?
meeting yet, it's tomorrow night.
Okay. Sophia, any? Okay.
Nothing to add.
All right. Any other task force members? No? Thanks, Leonard. Okay, I'll give a quick update. On Friday morning of last week, Rebecca, Tom, and I went down to see the school district staff, met with the superintendent, with Tom Phelps, with Rhonda Blake, and Clyde Wells, all 4 of them. Had a very nice meeting. It was partly a get-to-know-you meeting, a part of discovery for us. Hopefully, we did more listening than talking. Hard for me sometimes, but we got some good information, some good intel, established a relationship, invited them, and they all 3 came. So I'll call that a successful conversation. So thanks again for coming. Hopefully, this will be productive for you too.
Well, the only thing I wanted to add too, I think was really important that came out of the meeting, which I think is going to be important for everybody on this task force, is I think it's very important to be fact-based. So, it's knowing the numbers, knowing the dollars, knowing all those particular items. That's going to be really important to come up with any sort of options, rather than just saying we need this or that, we would like this. It doesn't mean anything. So being fact-based, I think I really appreciate getting that information from everyone, because that is going to be really key as we work together to move forward.
Definitely. Jeff?
The only thing that's happened since last week, I did have a chance to meet with Father Richard Trout at the Catholic Church, and he'd indicated that he's definitely interested in having conversations and pursuing any option there. Clearly, and he used roughly the same number that, a K-8 or an elementary school is going to be plus or minus $20 million, and that's a big chunk of change for the diocese as well, but certainly that's something they would look favorably upon to discuss more.
Okay. We got that up there as number 5. So Vanessa, we did a lot of work on the numbers this week.
Thank
Can
you to Rhonda also for sending the updated figures. The information, because Todd and Henry and I met on Thursday and went through all the numbers based upon our current situation, with just the build-out with our current situation and adding Island Village, and then the full build-out, including the 8,065 total homes. The numbers that we used were a little bit different. So Rhonda, I had forwarded everything on to Rhonda, and she had sent me the numbers that had changed as of June. So we have the new information. The basics is that as far as capacity for total school, so the K-8 through the high school, the number of student stations that we have, plus or minus 100, we can do without expanding. The flip side of that is, it would be, that has the 20%, that's with the 20% buffer that is required for the contract that is currently in place.
Can I get clarification on that? When, so you're saying currently, right now, K-8 high school not needing expanding?
No. And actually, all the way out through the expansion of Island Village, we would have, with the new numbers, we would have an extra 643 seats above the 20% additional capacity. Oh, sorry, let me flip to the other one, sorry. 403 seats out to Island Village. And then once you add up for the complete build-out, which is the 8,065.
Right.
With the 20% buffer, we're shy 86 students total.
Difficulty is in the
The
capacity
difficulty is
constraint
in-
of the existing campus.
Correct. The existing campus will not even contain the Island Village in our current, in the current capacity.
So when you talk about the current campus, you're talking about the K-8 campus?
K-8,
Okay.
correct.
So the K-8 campus, and I'm just trying to get this through my head, is short 86 students or is short, because I'm trying to differentiate between the two, because when you
If you're-
combine the
if you're-
high school
if you're
and
talking-
K-8
If you're
is,
talking about the K-8, and we can actually, maybe that would be, the most conducive time to do that maybe would be to break it down when we're actually doing the pros and cons.
okay.
Would that- would that-
Because when you add the total numbers in high school, that skews the numbers
It does,
entirely, and it
because in the
doesn't.
K-8, we're good now with an extra 183 seats. As soon as you add in Island Village at the complete build-out, we're shy 830 with the 20% capacity.
So Vanessa, one of the conclusions that I came to after scrubbing the numbers, and thanks to the information that we got, was no matter what, we're still going to need 1,000 seats somewhere in Celebration.
Over the next 10 to 15 years.
Yeah, by the time we get to the full
As long as it's at
entitlement.
Island Village.
Well, that would be for the full entitlement build-out. So
That's
whether-
the 8,065
someday we'll-
units.
Someday we'll need them, so I think we should at least plan for them somehow. Now, there's some who would say, well, let's just solve our immediate problem and move on with life, and maybe we have to do that, but while we're mobilized and we have this creative energy working, let's try and look a little bit further down the road so we don't end up right back here again in 5 or 10 years.
Can I just ask one question, Tom, and maybe it's directed at Rhonda, I'm not sure, but the forecasting model that we use to determine the number of seats we need, I get that is probably a county-wide number that's used, but if I look at the existing town of Celebration, the number of residents that are already here, and the ratio, it's overstated. Like today, we have 1,189 students that are Celebration residents at the school, against 5,803 homes. If we use a .25 model, that should be 1,450. So is that a function of the dynamics of our town look a little different than the county model? Is it because we have a higher proportion of older folks that don't have, children of school age, or could there be something contributing that we might see the number look different down the road?
I think as we go from tonight to next week, there's more refinement of the numbers that we're doing, and Vanessa and I and others are kind of crunching through these numbers. Part of that is the mix of product type that we have, so there's a different multiplier for grade level.
Right.
And then you got to think of this in a matrix. There's the multiplier by grade level, and then there's the multiplier that's applied to the kind of household.
Okay.
A single-family house
Okay.
versus a multifamily house versus a townhouse or
Mobile
mobile
homes,
home.
yeah.
So we'll get better in the accuracy of our projections, but regardless of how you slice it, this problem didn't go away.
We want, the number we used though was the maximum. So for the elementary school all the way through, that way at least we were covered to make sure that if we were, let's say they were all 8,065 units were all single-family homes, so better to be over than under in our estimations with regards to making sure we have enough capacity.
Okay, and maybe one more time, bear with me for just a minute. For those in the audience and those who are maybe just catching up to us on TV, let me state again what the problem is. So there's really 4 or 5 points here to make. Number one, the donation, development, and operating agreement between the Celebration Company and Osceola County School Board expires June 30th, 2016. All of the protections for the Celebration School and the Celebration community regarding busing, the 80/20 rule, portables, all those things expire along with that agreement. Number two, the proposed sale of the Island Village is really the catalyst that's starting this conversation. But the potential sale by the Celebration Company to a developer for residential use creates both a school capacity issue and a partial funding opportunity for additional student stations. Number three, the Celebration Company still has remaining residential entitlement beyond Celebration Village, up to the total of 8,065 units, which, if built out, will require even more student stations within Celebration. Plus, the county still has an acute shortage of capacity and funding outside of Celebration. Four, the proposal to expand the Celebration School, the K through 8 campus, as Jay articulated, has been overwhelmingly rejected by the Celebration residents because of safety and traffic and quality of education considerations. And as we've been talking about here, number five is we can create alternatives that are outside of Celebration, but we still need more seats because the Celebration Company is going to build or sell to residential developers who will build more houses, there will be more kids. And you can't, one of the options is just to shift some classes or kids from the K-8 over to the high school, but at some point, you can't shift enough to make that math work. We've got to build some more seats somewhere in Celebration or risk our kids getting bussed out. So that's the problem. So we have been appointed by CROA to try to represent all of Celebration, to just try and broker an honest deal. But this task force doesn't have land, we don't have money, we don't have anything but hopefully some brain power and a little bit of influence to try and crunch through as many alternatives as we can and try and come to a better recommendation than what we'll call, number one, the current King of the Hill option. We need to collectively come up with something better that will be, as have the most advantages for the most number of people, including us as residents, including Celebration Company, and including the school district. So that's our challenge. So we've got 8 alternatives on the board that we've already talked about. There's probably a 9th that includes parts and pieces, combinations of those options that will probably start to develop. But probably to get things started is to not dump on Plan A, but let's just start to articulate what is good about it. And there are some things that are good about it. I think it's a short list. There are more things wrong with it, but let's get it down on paper so that we can start to judge it against the other ideas.
Can we hear from the staff?
Yeah.
Folks like
Yes.
this?
Yeah, absolutely.
Also, you like that?
Well, again, we've had conversations, and for those of you who were at the CDD meeting, we did, present at least a general discussion about why we came to this conclusion. For quite some time, we've had some conversations with the Celebration Company, Todd and Henry, knowing that we were growing in the community and that we were going to need student stations. And as a lot of the boulevard was growing out, we were keeping ahead of that. That's why we did some reconfiguration within the current school. And we pretty much maxed out in the current school. There's no more room for reconfiguration or for additional student stations. So knowing that the Island Villages is coming on board, we were brainstorming different options, very similar to what you're going to be doing here, as to what can we build in the islands. Will it accommodate the growth within Celebration, and will it accommodate the concerns we have outside of Celebration? We talked about the 7-8 moving to the high school, and would that work? We talked about a middle school in the Island Villages. We talked about an elementary school. We talked about, could we do a K-8? And then we always seem to come back down to downtown. And one of our driving forces has always been to maintain the K-8 concept downtown. It's always been our understanding, and just correct me if I'm wrong, but it is a beloved center of town. It's you love your K-8 feel. You don't want to see it go away. And we don't want to split the town either. So if we were doing schools in the island villages, it had the potential to split the town somewhere so that we could take students from the Celebration community and fill the school. So we kind of again shifted back to downtown, and could we make downtown work and still maintain the K-8 concept? It may not be the K-8 as one whole school, and we might have two different schools, but on the same property. But I will tell you, every time we've had our meetings, we always come back and say, well, what about the traffic, okay? And that it's already a concern, what will we do there? So that was always part of our conversation whenever we were making a decision, even considering downtown. However, we knew that we were going to be afforded the opportunity to mitigate the property that is currently wetland, so that we knew that we could tap into some of that, and we have some conceptual plans to pull some of that traffic off of the roads. So in our opinion as staff, we felt like we could make that work and pull enough traffic off of the roads and still maintain K-8, which is something that we felt the community would like for us to do. Do something with the traffic by queuing up some vehicles off of the road, and having a true middle school and an elementary school, but again, maintaining them on the same property. There was discussion about adding a gym in that concept, and there was also, that other thing, I think it was called the parking garage, but we're not going to mention that again. But there was the idea of having some type of a gym, which, in listening to what some of the community members had said, that we already got a gym, why would we want another one? But maybe a multi-purpose type facility might be of more use to the community. And we can definitely see that as a bonus to us as well. So that was another part of the discussion. And I know that we met with each board member. Board members, for the most part, were in favor of considering the idea, especially if there is a gym included in it. So again, that's kind of where we came to the student stations of 1,000 and maintaining it on the current property. We knew that there was going to be a traffic study that would have to be done, but again, this is kind of where we ended up as staff, and that's why we presented that to the community members that were present at the CDD meeting. So you guys knew where, kind of after throwing everything at the wall, this is kind of where we ended up. And we still feel it's a viable option. We do want to see the traffic study, and as we've talked about before in many different meetings, the traffic study comes back and it's just, they don't see a workable solution in getting traffic off of the road, or doing different traffic patterns, that type of thing. Then we're obviously going back to look at something else.
Yeah.
We are not opposed to different ideas, not at all. Just our driving force is not only going to be what can we do to accommodate the growth and Celebration, but we also need to keep in mind that we have capacity concerns outside of Celebration, which we also need to accommodate, and we have this much money to do it. All right.
Tom, I should have given you an opportunity to say all that. I wrote down the key points I think we need to put on the board, but thanks for that background.
And Clyde, I don't know if Clyde or Rhonda have anything they want to add to what I'm saying.
I just wanted to ask a question, if I may, and I thank you very much for that. One of the things I hear that people are very fearful of, and I don't hear you saying it, so maybe it's this 20 years that it expires, the 80-20, and not busing the students out. And there's some people are fearful that you will leverage that to get what you want in Celebration. Do you understand? I mean, I don't quite understand why there was a 20-year time limit put on those agreements. But we do know that they're going to expire, and I guess my question is there some quid pro quo that in order to keep those agreements and or to put them back into place, do we have to do certain things that the school board would like, I guess? The other thing that I wondered about is when you looked at how Celebration was sold, it was often sold that, especially for elementary school, the kids would be close to the school, the 1 through 5. And actually, when you get to Island Village, they aren't going to be very close. So was there any reason that they decided not to do the 1 through 5 in Island Village? Did that just not come as a suggestion?
Well, I can answer that.
Yeah.
The reason, first off, I'm going to make it perfectly clear. I think K-8 schools are great. I think K-8 schools are what's in the best interest of kids. You get a lot of kids, we get a lot of K through 5s and a lot of traditional 6 through 8 middle schools in this county. And you do all over America. Kids typically come out of elementary school in pretty good shape. Then they enter elementary school, and they enter middle school, and they've got to reestablish their reputation, learn the staffing. There's a transition that happens, and kids sometimes, they fall off a cliff, so to speak, with it. With a K-8 school, I think it's better for kids because if you don't move, the kid can go to the same school for 9 years, which is a very good thing. I mean, consistency is a real good thing for kids. But on top of that, with the K-8 school, you're getting more capacity, which, to Tom's point, we need countywide. We need the student station. We can get 1,100 student stations or maybe more. Plus you get the other gym. Plus you get the recreational facilities also. That's why, if you do a K-5, you still have the issue that you still need middle school seats. You're still not going to get a gym with a K-5. You're not going to get ball fields necessarily with it. And even with the K-5 concept relative to Island Village, going back to that, based on what we have been told we have to work with right now, the 10 acres doesn't meet SREF, which is the state requirement for educational facilities. So we've got to work within the constraints that we have. And we can't even, to take it a step further, when I was talking with the Celebration Company about it, they were interested in the charter school concept, but they didn't want to do business with a, quote, charter school company. So they wanted to find somebody else who could take the land. Well, the school district, we found out, can't take the land and build a non-SREF facility on it, which the land doesn't conform with the size relative to that. So then we had to find an independent third party. I've already spoken with the executive director from the Osceola Foundation for Education, and they've helped us facilitate charter schools in a different capacity. They actually operate 2, PM Wells and Canoe Creek, and John Bushy, who was here last time, he was the principal of those schools also. But in this capacity, they wouldn't have to build it and use their money. They just need to basically take the land, make sure it's used for public schools. Or the other thing that I think personally makes more sense for Celebration, because the land is within Celebration, and it's a conversation to have, and Bill, this might be coming to you the first time, is that the CDD actually own the land, because they've got more of a dog in the hunt, so to speak. But to answer your question, why not a K-5 necessarily? A K-8, I think, is better for kids. You get more amenities with it, you get more student stations, it fills more needs.
But are you talking about a K-8 that would be a charter school?
Yes.
Oh, you're talking about a K-8 charter school. I thought it
Correct.
was-
There's not enough money or land to build a traditional charter school, a traditional school on that
Then you
location.
can do that on a much smaller thing.
Charter
without the
schools,
gym and
yes,
without
charter
anything.
schools don't have, charter schools, yes, it's the way it is. I'm not judging it. They can build schools for half as much money, twice as fast, and they're building good schools.
Some places.
The ones that I would let come here would build good schools. And Charter Schools USA's done a good
What about my
job.
other
for us.
question about, do you hear among the board this 20-year expiration?
Here, yes. When you say the board, you mean this board or the school board?
I mean, the school board.
School board doesn't bring it up, no. It's never come up.
I would like to say, just to clarify a
Go ahead,
little
Clint.
bit more of what we were talking about, first about the 80-20 and leverage, that's not even, we've not even discussed that. I'll be honest with you, I wasn't even aware of it. Coming due in 16, okay?
I was.
Really?
It's not something that we're looking, as an arm or anything, but let's go back to where we started from, okay? The idea of having the developer for Island Village front the cost for construction, and they would recoup that cost back through impact fee credits that the district would provide once they start COing their properties or putting permits and they go to CO. They get the impact fees and that pays their debt back. they can do that. The school district right now, our debt capacity does not allow us to bond anything. We're not bonding new construction. We are building a $75 million high school that is going to absorb any revenues we have on the books right now in the 5-year period, other than a few $1 million that we do have in there possibly for contingencies of whether or not we have to add a small wing somewhere or something. Those things, and we do have some other obligations as far as mitigation agreements with developers where we have to purchase property. So we have that in our budget. Outside of that, we do not have the $20 million, $15 to $20 million to construct an elementary school. If we did, let's talk about that concept a minute, because I want to make clear that we staff internal had a lot of discussion about this, okay? Aside from meeting with the Disney and Celebration folks, internal, what's best for everybody? And I will tell you, we have always came with the idea we did not want to split the community, okay? First and foremost, we felt even if we had the money to build an island village, that development will not fill a school enough to where it will cover the cost for all the administrative services and everything. There's a delta that we have to hit with student numbers to generate enough FTE to make it a viable school. If you fall below that, that's where you see these other districts are having to close schools because they can't, operational costs are not there. On the impact fee credits that Island Village is approximately, I think it's 12,300,000. I think it's 12.3 or something that it would generate. We were looking at building a 1,000 seat middle school, but there would be some options built into that school that would also joint use of the facility we already have, such as the kitchen and different things, some of the ancillary things that are already at the K-8 school that we could utilize and save cost on it. Because we could not build a middle school for 12
And Clyde, you mentioned that we're $2 million short even with the 12.3 impact fees, even if we did
At
that.
least.
Even if we did that.
At least, it's probably more like $4 to $5 million short. It's probably about an $18 million,
Sure.
thing to actually get it to where we would like to have it. So that, I just want everyone to understand, staff's the one that actually came with this whole concept of keeping it on this property. And, we're hearing the community, and we understand that. It was never meant, it was not going to the board for any type of action or anything. This is all very conceptual with Todd and his group. We're just we're doing a lot like your task force and looking at everything. So now we need to be part of this, and let's figure it out.
Yeah.
I just have two questions. One is, 1,000 seat middle school, looking at the numbers still would not work out because at 100% capacity, middle school, basically on the numbers, is 827. You're still short on the K-5, at least at the numbers I'm looking at. In K-5, you'll max out at 1,700. Your capacity is 1,500 in the middle of the K-5 school. So somewhere along the line, either you're playing the odds that you're going to have more of one or the other, but 1,000 seats for 6th to 8th graders, which is a typical middle school, you'll have enough of those, but you'll still be short on the K-5 if the numbers I'm looking at is correct. I'm just looking at numbers. So, the 1,000 seat, that was my first question. Because 1,000 seats would be great because you'll have extra capacity in middle school, but you'll still be short on the K-5. And then the next thing, I would just, because I'm in construction, I'm just looking at your rough floor plan, your rough thing, and I'm just looking at just I think one of the things that might be overshooting a lot of people is just looking at your first conceptual sketch. This building looks huge compared to even some of the square footages you have now. So I'm just curious what other amenities and everything was going to go into this building that people in the community would be able to understand what's going in there, because the footprint of that building is like, twice the size of what the middle school is right now, just on the ground floor. And I was hearing that it was a 2-story structure. Right. So, and also the placement of it just seems like it absorbs a lot of the shared space that the community uses right now. So it eats into a lot of footprint of the community shared space. And because if we are reclaiming wetlands, why wouldn't we try to focus on staying on the creek side towards the school as opposed to the other side? You know, if you're reclaiming wetlands, wetlands are wetlands, so if you try to keep the school closer, and that would help with your cafeteria and everything else on that side because you're closer to the facilities.
I think we wanted a delineation between the student body is what we were looking at.
Well, right now, the K-8, you know, and you've heard from Jay too and everything, the students get along right from K to, you know, kindergarten up. So if you start delineating them that way, then it does make a difference where the middle school goes then. You know, if you're separating.
Brian, part of your question was, I should have mentioned earlier, you asked last time to get a program from them of what was
Right.
included. Clyde said he would send that, so
Okay.
we'll get that. So, Tom, I'm sorry, before we, let me, we'll have time for all the questions, but Tom, we paraphrased really quickly. Advantages, keeps the K through 8 together, may include a gym, doesn't split the campuses. Traffic study is still pending, what we're doing is pros in green, kind of just notes in black and cons in red. And maybe the most obvious one is a real paraphrase, is that this was by far the cheapest option.
Yes.
Okay, so is it okay if we put that up there?
It worked within the money we have.
Show me the money.
No, it didn't, Tom. It didn't. It worked the best with the money we had, because we're still short money. Correct.
Well, I mean, school
So
district.
you're right, Tom, it's the cheapest option. It is the cheapest option.
It is.
And it accomplished what the community, well, as far as numbers anyway, accomplished what the community needed for student stations within Celebration and accomplished what we
Yeah,
needed from
so
outside.
two more.
Outside of
Was the
Celebration.
most inexpensive option.
I was thinking about this guy. There's two Toms, I can say Tom in the book.
There's three.
Oh, that's right, I forgot about Tom.
I'm gonna have to start taking numbers
I
here.
forgot about Tom 3.
And it accomplished, fulfills the capacity need. So what, I'm sorry, Dan, what were you going to say?
I just had a follow-up question for you. You mentioned that, I don't think we really need to go all through the history, but you mentioned that this plan is pretty preliminary. How far into the drafting, I mean, has it been drafted?
Oh, no, just a site plan, like that, a layout,
Renderings.
You
concept.
had mentioned that you had the draft language that you were working on, contract language, is that true?
We were doing a
Oh,
memorandum of
agreement.
understanding.
Yeah, MOU. But we didn't have,
Has not been drafted,
Contractor.
has it been?
Hasn't come to the board.
I'm sorry, I was thinking withdrawing.
No.
We haven't heard an architect or anything.
Because we keep talking about a K-8 concept right now, but everything that I'm hearing about the new plan suggests that the middle school is going to be on a separate portion of land, and it's going to be fairly separate, 1,000 seats from the K-5 that exists right now. Is that still a K-8 model? And Rose, I wonder if you have a perspective that you could share with us here on this, about what is important for the middle school developmentally and what kind of interactions they have right now with the rest of the school.
Well, they do have interactions with the rest of the school or middle schoolers. Let me say first and foremost, I had the opportunity to speak to many parents. I've had the privilege of being a school counselor and a math teacher at the school and working at the school for 10 years. And across the board, without a doubt, parents want quality education in their children. That is what this is all about. And that the questions and the fears and the task force and everything is because they don't want it. They don't want any expansion to compromise quality. And right now, we do have one of the top performing schools in the state. And I think the fear is that with everything going on, that will be compromised. A true middle school, and we are not a true middle school because we are K-8 provides a lot of benefits for students. Yes, they don't, and Jay was speaking about the transition, it is easier, but it's still a transition. The only thing easier is that the campus is familiar and we have the same cafeteria. That is the only thing that is not different.
And same staff, they know the principal, I mean, they have familiar faces.
Right, it is familiar faces, it is familiar. But, however, it is not a true middle school, and we are limited because we are not a true middle school. We don't have an art program because we are scheduling it with a K-5. I was a little concerned when I heard that we will expand the middle school and still use the same cafeteria as the rest of the school, because it is the
No.
Okay.
They'll have their own
Kitchen.
cafeteria. The kitchen where the food is prepared will be in the same kitchen.
Okay.
They'll expand the
That was
cafeteria.
very
They have their own
just to
They have their own
clear it out
cafeteria.
there.
I was confused.
So, to answer your question, yes, there are benefits to being a K-8. Do the students interact? Yes, because we have students that are in the library. We have sometimes middle school classes that will adopt an elementary class. So there is opportunities for mentoring. And would that be compromised by separating? Not so much, because we could still travel but it is two separate entities in some ways, but we are a K family. And so it's a privilege for me to be able to work mostly with middle school. But if I see a first grader crying, I'm not going to turn them away. And then I get to know them as they go on. So there is something very special about that, and I think we do need to preserve that. But most of all, I know across the board, we want the quality of the education to be there. And if perhaps I want people to open their minds a little bit, that if we have a middle school, that we could provide different electives, perhaps have an IB program that feeds into the high school. So I don't want the fear to limit us to the potential that we could possibly have.
Okay.
Can I
Option
add,
number 3.
Can I add one more thing too? And this is primarily to folks in the audience, and we'll watch it later. I've spoken to a lot of residents, and a lot of them say, hey, we don't want anything to change, right? But the reality is, something's going to change. Something has to change. If you look at the numbers and you look at the impact and how the community is growing, something is going to change. It has to. So the goal for the task force is to make this change as painless as possible. But not everyone's going to be happy. In fact, not everyone on the task force is going to be happy. You're trying to get the best option that delivers the best effect to this town and to the children, both inside and outside celebration. But there's not going to be one, wow, that's a winner plan. There's not going to be one of those. And I really want to set expectation, because we're going to be going back and forth on these things, and at one point we're going to end up with this is the best solution.
The least worst plan.
I have actually one question, and I don't know, and I think the school board would really answer this in the town. One of the things that keeps coming up is the traffic, and that is because we have residents all at the same time heading to the same area of town. Was there ever an idea, and I don't know if the community would like this, if there were just buses that any student in town, and then we would just have buses going to the center of town rather than everyone driving their car, and then the kids that could walk could walk? I didn't know if that.
That's expense. That's expense we don't
That's the
have.
whole parking problem.
Okay, yeah.
Good luck.
Maybe it comes to that, Rose.
But
We'll see.
the problem with that is, you see, also at the high school, a lot of residents still drop
Still
off.
drive.
Still drive to high
Exactly
school.
right.
Because, one, the buses show up too early, so everyone decides to give their
Okay.
high schoolers a little bit more time, so they drive up to high school.
So it's
So
still.
there's probably a lot of buses that go, well, there's a couple buses that go through Celebration
Yeah.
for high school, that are probably empty.
I don't know about that.
Okay.
I don't know about that.
That'd be more.
No, I
Okay,
don't think
let's
so.
go to cons.
All right.
Let's be nice, and if you'll allow me, I've got 6. I'll just throw them down, and if you're ready, Susan?
I'm ready.
And I'll articulate each one, but let's, for writing purposes, number 1 is safety, as opposed to traffic. 2 is that it's the wrong location. 3, I'll just call zoning, and I'll explain what I mean by that. 4, am I going too fast? 4 is parks. 5 is parking. And 6 is wetlands. So what I mean by number 1, safety, and I've said this before, I won't belabor it. Safety and traffic are not the same thing. Traffic, to me, is a commercial issue. It's It's how long you wait at stoplights, it's service levels of roads, it's convenience. Safety is about an ambulance and a fire truck, and that's the study that I want to see. What I mean by the wrong location is that the current K through 8, what was originally the K through 12, was designed as a neighborhood school. It's not supposed to be a regional school. If we need a regional school, we should put a regional school in a regional school location, not downtown. Number 4, zoning might not be the right summary word, but the school district does own the property, but they don't own the streets, they don't own the sidewalks, they don't own the surrounding neighborhoods, and this might be a code violation. And if we have to, we'll look into that. The parks, by contract, and maybe by, contract between everybody who bought here and the developer, these these recreational fields are owned by the county, but we have the right to use them when the school is not using them. To cover them up or to replace them with parks someplace else that you have to drive to is not the same. And that's why I keep bringing up this issue, Todd, about compliance with the PUD. Parking, the conceptual plan does, other than a little bit of parking behind the existing, or on the east side of the campus, there's a little bit of parking over there, but the additional teachers, the additional cars, there isn't any additional parking, and those people park on the streets where it's already congested. And then the issue about the wetlands. This is the Celebration Company's business to contribute the cost of the wetland permits, the cost of the actual work. But this is what I do for a living. I'm a real estate developer, and every agency that I've ever dealt with on wetland permitting asks the question and makes you prove that you've done everything you can to avoid and minimize. Those are the 2 watchwords, avoid and minimize. Todd, I'm sure you've heard that 1,000 times. And if there are other alternatives, they don't care if this is the most commercially viable option. You've got to prove the case that you have done everything you can to avoid and minimize wetland impacts. So I'll stand down for other disadvantages.
I'll go first?
Sure.
Working my way. So I had a few of them, and they're all around education quality. So the first one is, and it was confirmed again tonight, we're effectively creating a middle school anyway. From everything I've heard, we're just putting it in the same geographic location, which is the source of most of our concern, is the geography and the location of all this traffic, that many students, et cetera. Everything that Rebecca had sent to me that I've read, continually reinforces the fact that large school campuses are not conducive to great quality education. They're not good for teachers, their level of engagement. They're not good for extracurricular activity and participation. They typically lead to busing activity, which detracts from the neighborhood community school that we all kind of know and love. So I think that the education quality, I think, would be diminished by this, just simply because we're now making it a 2,500 student location, which I think is the largest K-8 in the whole county, isn't it, or very close?
It's very similar to what Narcousie is.
Yeah, but in downtown Celebration, so.
Right, but you're talking to the quality of education,
Yeah.
and I'll argue that Narcoosie's quality of education has not suffered due to their school splitting from a K-8 into an elementary and a middle school. And they have a very similar number of students who go through their 2 schools. And I'll still say that they're a high-quality school.
Okay. That's all I got.
Okay.
I'm sorry, one other thing, just, you mentioned the word commercial I had on here too, just the traffic detracting from business in the downtown area as well. So it has an economic impact on the town.
That's a good point. Anybody else?
We've mentioned safety, we've mentioned traffic, but we haven't talked explicitly about safety, which I think is a big concern, and the emergency services access during peak periods, shall we say. Everybody knows when they are, roughly 8:48 every morning and 3:40 in the afternoon. I also have a question. I'm not quite sure how this conceptual plan is going to work long term, because when we look at the numbers, it does seem to say that even if we added 1,000 stations, just in terms of the separation of the campuses, there still would be a 1,700-person almost elementary school at the end of this, and all of the pressures that we currently have on the cafeteria. How big would it be then?
No, I'm not sure what you're quoting, but your K-5 for Celebration,
And
the build out of the Celebration Boulevard, because that's not completely built out yet, and the numbers we're using for Island Villages would be right around 1,100.
Okay.
And after, based on the build out that we have for Island Villages, which is 1,010 single family and 300 multifamily, Todd, correct me, but I
That's
think
right.
that leaves you about 600 to get to your 8,065.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's right.
So how big?
So-
You're looking at the 20%
Sure.
mitigation, but it's because the high school
But
is
I-
still within the 80/20.
But how big would the elementary school be at the finish?
Well, that's 1,100, and then if we put our 20% on top of that, you're 1,300,
At full
1,400.
build out of this, full build out, that's a big elementary school though. That is a big elementary
It
school.
is.
And all the pressures we currently have with our 1,300 kids right now, which is K through 8, like the fact that our kindergartners have to eat breakfast at 10:30 in the morning, are still going to be there. We're not going to create extra capacity, we're just going to create double on the other side of the wetlands. or where they are. So I think we're still going to have a lot of negative elements that we're currently working through in the school at the moment, just through sheer factors of size. And obviously that's going to impact things that happen within the school educationally as well. How is art and Spanish and band going to be provided to all of those students if we don't see comparable expansions in all of those areas within the school?
Well, the point of this wasn't to pile on. It was just to get it up on paper so that when we go through the other ones, we don't repeat some of the same issues.
One other comment?
Could you come up to,
Yeah, I just have a comment.
actually, would you mind just going?
Oh, I got you. Okay. Eileen Barr, 1138 Mosaic Drive. And the reason I'm asking this question now is it says, expand the Celebration School by up to 1,000 students. And all the list is great, going from, say, 500 to 1,000. What I'd just sort of like to throw out is probably we're going to end up with something that's really the combination of other alternatives. Is there a number? I mean, the statement has been made that at the moment on the physical land, we can't put any more buildings, students, whatever. But is there a number of somewhere 2 to the 500 number where we can expand that people would feel comfortable with?
Yeah, Eileen, if y'all don't mind. We've talked about that a little bit, and I think you're right. There will be an option number 9 that's a combination of others, where there's a little bit of expansion here that doesn't create all those problems and other solutions
I was
elsewhere.
really just sort of interested in the number that we were.
Can I ask a question to Rhonda? She gave the 1,300 number, and I'm not looking at the 80/20, I'm looking at the total, because that is really a real number. What was the total number for middle school?
For middle school, with your Celebration, your build out, and the Island Villages, it's about 648.
So,
But that's just Celebration itself. I'm not quoting anyone else. That's
So-
just your build out.
so that's not 80/20, that's 80.
That's just those numbers are all Celebration, what we're expecting Celebration to generate at build out minus about the 600 homes that
Okay.
we're not discussing.
So, and I'm just trying to understand this, so when we originally talked about K through 5, let's say 1,100, right, that number was mentioned. That's just Celebration?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So the total of that is 1,748.
Yes, that's what,
And we have to add 20% on top of that
to keep to our original agreement.
to keep to original agreement. So, let me throw this out. If there is a way to not keep to the original agreement, but get those number of seats somewhere else, is that something that's possible? So I'm looking at restriction of space, so you only have so much room for so many. And if there was a possibility to expand the K-8, this size as opposed to this size, and get that 20% plus student stations somewhere else, is that something that can't be discussed?
Conceptually, sure. I mean, conceptually, it sounds great, but, I mean, there's a lot more than just, a theoretical hypothesis.
Well, no, this is the beginning of,
No, I
no,
understand,
there'd have to be more concrete, because the reality is.
But to your point, I mean, I'm not speaking for staff, and I can't speak for all the other board members, but anything that would be viable, that works financially and from a logistics perspective, I mean, you'd be foolish not to look at it, Tom.
Can I just ask, what was the thought behind the 80-20? My thought is that we had overcapacity at that time because we were building up. I assume that's what it was. Does anybody know?
I'm sorry.
What was the basis of the 80-20 when it first came out?
That was in the original agreement in 94. Tom, you were there?
Does it mean that we've, I mean, my question is, have we outgrown it?
I don't know that I'm the right guy to explain it, but you're right that we built the school up front before we had population to fill it.
So it made sense.
We were very nervous that someday we would outgrow it and that we had to protect at least 80. And then on the other side, it was important to the county, who we were partnering with, that kids that were living close or family of staff could have an opportunity to send their kids here by lottery or by some way. So it seemed, and I didn't negotiate the contract. Guys right down the hall from me did. But it seemed like a reasonable thing to do, and it's held up pretty well for 20 years.
Can I just make a quick statement with regards to that? Most of the extra 20%, although at the K-8 right now it's not 20%, a lot of them are actually kids of staff members.
They're coming out of zones. That's
Right,
correct.
so that's where most of the out of zone comes from. It's actually our teachers that are bringing their kids in, so that they're there at the same place. So that's where a lot of it.
It's illustrated for the 14 years ago, which is a long time looking at it now. My daughter started kindergarten. School was at 70% capacity, not celebration, I mean capacity, 70%. And so they opened it up to other, and then they closed it down, I want to say 2006 or 7, Dr. Kennedy said, I just can't take any more out of zones. And that was 06 or 07, that's when it really started, when Artisan Park really came out of the ground. That made a big difference.
Can I just clarify one thing on the 80-20, make sure I understand it correctly? I thought that last meeting, or perhaps the one before, that the 80-20 rule applied to public education within the entirety of Celebration. That was both the K-8 and the high school. So while we are, perilously close to maximum capacity at the K-8, we have only 20-some% occupancy in the high school, correct?
Correct. Yeah. Now, I just thought of this, but we keep, in the math that we're doing and the projections that we're all calculating, we're assuming that the 80-20 will continue in a new contract.
That's my question. Why doesn't? Yeah.
It's a good question, other than it's held up pretty well.
And it's not our only 80-20 agreement. We have that with Harmony, we have that with Bella Lago, we have that with any school that's on an EFBD, such as Flora Ridge. So it's typical that when we go into those agreements, it's 80% for the community, and then we build it 20% larger to allow for incoming out of zones.
Todd, in the draft agreement that you have already been working on, does that 80-20 continue?
Yes.
And for the combined K-8 and high school.
Yeah, I think it actually, I don't remember now, it's been a couple of weeks, but I think it did. It may have been specific to each location, but.
And then it was combined, and I'm not sure how it will go next year. I mean, it's a new board, it's a different staff than the original agreement, but originally it was K-8. I mean, it was for the K-8, and then when the high school came online, they combined and said between the two, that school district staff reserves the right to determine the configuration, so we can keep it at both, or we can let it be all in one.
Well, I've been processing this for all of about 5 minutes, but there's going to be enough variables in this equation when it comes down to the end that maybe we just leave that alone.
Sure.
I mean, unless there's a compelling reason to do otherwise.
And there's the new high school too. Does that mean things get changed? The $75 million high school that's coming.
I have a question in regards to the safety. If we had an expansion, we had an elementary and middle school, could they be staggered and 60s in elementary. So where elementary would start.
Definite possibility, yes. One of the things that we heard from a few was that, prefer to be as close as possible in time so that, we're not, in some ways you may be creating another problem because now I'm dropping off my elementary child and I gotta go home and I gotta get back in my car and drive
Rather than
back
waiting,
again. So
they'll just wait.
They'll just wait.
They'll just wait, yeah.
Yeah.
So, those are things that we would still have to study as to how we would, if we would do a staggered start, or we would work out something where you can still drop off your children in one location, but, we have like a extended day type area or someplace where the children can go for that short time, so you only have to do one drop off. But, those are things that we'd still, want to explore.
Okay, we should move on unless anything else?
Yeah.
Sir?
I won't vote for it.
Good to know.
And you want a con, and I'm confident that 3 votes beats a good argument. I'm sure confident I can get the votes in Celebration. I represent Celebration, so.
Good, thank you. The next one, option 2, is redistribute the grades from Celebration School to the high school. This one was thrown out pretty early. I think before most of us understood the math a little bit more. The idea would be there's a constraint right now that we're up against in the K through 8. There's less at the high school. Just start slowly moving. Start with the 8th grade, move it over to the high school. If we still have compression, move the 7th grade over. That was the idea. I think it's probably a little naive now that we know that that's not going to solve the problem. Anything worth talking about, or do we just disregard it?
Just to do that doesn't solve the regional difficulties, and that's obviously
Well, there's
part
no-
of this conversation.
Yeah, there's no place to put the high school kids, they're there somewhere else, so it's like a non-starter.
It would have to, you'd have to do it slowly. You'd have to matriculate out. We wouldn't just kick kids out of the school.
No. But, yeah.
So we just put an X through this one?
But I wonder if there's developmentally, does it work? What do you think, Rose, to have 8th graders at the high school?
Well, we have our 8th graders currently taking high school credit classes. And we do have this initiative to, in 7th grade, to have them really consider their high school and college options. I'm just nervous as a middle school counselor and to have 7th graders head to a high school.
I wouldn't throw it completely at the top.
Yeah.
I would make sure let's capture all the pros and cons.
Okay, well, let's do it. Okay.
Okay. So I guess the pro would be that they are in that, some of them are taking high school classes, and there may be that mindset where they're that high school, college, and that mindset that the initiative that is going on in Osceola County. That would be a pro.
They would actually have high school teachers teaching it too.
They would have high school teachers teaching it. I'm not sure if they would still have this, but Celebration High School has the AVID program, has the IB program, has the junior ROTC, so the 7th graders going there would have a variety of activities and clubs. However, the con would be, sending your 12-year-old girl to a place with 18-year-old boys.
I won't support it.
Now, just to be fair, though, we did do that in Celebration for K through 12.
That was just Celebration Kids, though.
I know that, but I'm just saying it did happen.
Oh, I didn't say out.
So Jay, what was wrong with the other kids though, not Celebration kids?
I just don't like, when you had it here, you had kids who knew each other, they grew up in the school from kindergarten on up. Now you're talking about taking kids, an 11 or 12-year-old kid from basically a warm and fuzzy to a much more urban setting, let's say. I don't think that they're ready for it. I just don't think that it's a good mix. I don't like the idea of 11 and 12-year-old girls going to school with 18-year-old boys. There's no upside to it. Now, again, if you had a school like a magnet school, like an art school, a health sciences school, where kids are competing to get in, they're there because they want to be there, they got to maintain a certain GPA, that's an entirely different type of a school. This is a comprehensive high school. You got kids zoned there, and I just don't support it.
Let me give Leonard a moment.
Just a real quick comment, Leonard Tim, 411 Campus Street. I don't need that, Jay. Talking too loud already. Actually, Rose already brought up some of the points that I had.
That's a compliment.
As far as the 8th grade can get high school credit, and something I've seen throughout schools in the U.S. years ago was 9th grade centers and 8th and 9th grade centers located on high school campuses.
That's right.
So you're not only keeping the 8th graders away from the seniors, you're keeping the 9th graders away from the seniors also in that paradigm. So if you configured the existing buildings you already have at the high school where you had an 8th and 9th grade center, that would make a positive note on that particular one. Also gives the 8th graders an additional sports opportunities, et cetera, because all of the fields they do have located down at that area. It also does what Rebecca has talked about, is only gives the students one transition. You go K to 7, you go 8 to 12.
Exactly.
So it goes back to the transition area there. So it ticks a certain number of boxes that I didn't hear anyone speaking about.
Yeah, good point.
And the other thing, you can also stagger the times too.
Leah?
Well, he did it. So
Okay.
With the K, would that be a pre-K to 6 then?
Pre-K
To fill the,
Pre-K, well, K through 7.
K to 7.
Could it be pre-K to 7?
I don't know, because there's, with the capacity issues coming online, that you can do that.
You know, the mics are pretty sensitive.
Leah Carey is 1049 Nash Drive. We just came from the PTA meeting, and the administrator there was talking about how this is an exciting opportunity and not just thinking of the negatives. And one of the things that he said was if they expanded at the K-8, that would give them the opportunity to have a pre-K program, which we don't have and we would desperately love to have. So if they got a little more room with the 8th graders going up to the high school, that would give them an option there. And he also, that whole thing about the K-9s being, the 8 and 9s being together, their cafeteria can handle it and all that kind of stuff. They only do 2 lunches there a day. That's not a problem. And even the way that Florida builds school with those different buildings, you could even put those 8th and 9th graders kind of in their own building like you've got them anyway. And but also an interesting thing that he said that plays a little bit to the first point was in the traffic, that they might consider the district land on Starling, widening Starling on the school side of the road, bring it in so that you make a bus drop-off or a car lane or that might help with traffic, because depending on how, I know the fields jumble around too, so I don't know, but he said that, and that's the first time I'd heard that, and I thought that was interesting. Pardon?
Where the tennis courts are?
Yes, sort of, yeah, because, there's that big, there's a chunk of land there, you could build another line, but I'm just throwing that out.
Leonard, one more time?
Sorry, Tom, I left out the very last point that goes back to what Jay had came up with to begin with, as far as you need a new high school out in this area anyway, and through the transition of building Island Village out, which is not going to go, first house can't be occupied for 2.5 years. There's plenty of time to matriculate out most of the high school, we need all of the high school, to make the K center and to get a high school land piece bought and started out in this West County during that period.
Yeah.
And since it wouldn't cost, and I'm not speaking for Todd, but Todd has offered the $12.3 million in prepaid fees. Since it wouldn't cost anything to move the kids down there, the 12.3 could go out towards that new high school and build, I don't know, you're talking what? 500 student stations, I guess, is what that would cover in a high school, more or less.
Yeah, maybe, yeah, something.
Thank you.
Roughly.
There's a couple of other points. When you put, I was doing a lot of reading about it, when you put set grades, I don't know that anybody's suggesting moving 7th grade, but if you did move 8th grade to the high school, maybe it would begin to get some of that benefit of dropout rates. 7 through 12 schools have the lowest high school dropout rate, typically. There may be some educational benefits to looking into this as an option. The question is, which grade and what age, and how could you do it to balance it?
Then
So
the
I
other-
think maybe this is an option we could come revisit in connection with another one.
The other question is, I mean, what's going to give you the biggest bang for the buck? There's a limited amount of money. And I mean, not to be coarse or boil it down, but this all is a function of money. If we had unlimited money, unlimited land, none of us would be sitting here. But, there's this much need and this much money. And, you got to look at how you're going to use the resources that you've got to accommodate the needs the best you can. And, juggling a few kids from here and there isn't going to get us where we need. So
It will reduce the land impact.
It will, but I still need, you're thinking of it from a celebration-centric perspective to a large degree, which is understandable, and it's not a negative. But we got needs in the west side of the county that we need to accommodate. And, if someone can show a way where we're going to gain, 500, 1,000, et cetera, student stations on top of what you need in celebration, that's why some of the options I'm looking at, a lot of this is good, and I hope that everybody can come to a conclusion, something that is good, but I got to get something across the finish line. Independent of what you all do here, staff, et cetera, I hope something positive, but meanwhile, I got to get something across the finish line. That's my job. We can talk about it, this, et cetera, but this is real for me.
So you're opposed to the first two?
Number two, I'm willing to consider. I'm not drawing a line. Number one, I am opposed to. Yes, I keep.
It's short term, and it probably ends up in combination with others.
Yeah.
We got 4 more meetings, and we're going to take every minute we have.
And I know you will be very judicious how you use that time, Tom.
So can I make 2 points? One, I think we have to really avoid the danger of trying to evaluate these every time we put a point up here. Let's get them on, really, we should focus on capturing as much as we possibly can tonight. And secondly, I think we did miss Leonard's point on there, that one of the benefits was this creates funding for another alternative somewhere else in the county where there might be a greater need and you're not busing kids.
And Jeff, that's a great point. I can't help but evaluate.
Of course. That's what we have to do.
My take
take a step back.
My position on this is different than yours. It's not yours.
Susan, just that this is only a partial solution in red.
Okay.
I think we might be missing some important staff discussion.
Oh,
Invite them to.
of course. Just something you want to share?
If we're talking about a 500-student high school, we can't run a 500-student high school. There's no, you can't offer programs, and you just can't do that. So as far as, one of the comments.
Now, if it's subsidized, we can't.
So we wouldn't have the balance for
We would have the balance, so yeah, that's.
Okay.
I think we had a question
We had
from
one
the
question.
floor.
What was-
What's the
what was-
smallest high school you find community?
Administratively, what would you?
1850 is 2,000.
And how many will the new high school that you're building?
3,000.
3,000.
2,800 to 3,000.
And will that impact anyone in the Celebration High School?
Currently, it's mostly going to work for the east side, central to the east side of town.
Okay.
Very minimal, if at all.
But it could shift.
Are there high schools in the county that could have additional wings added to them right now, or are all the land's built out?
Poinciana High has to add a wing.
Poinciana High School has space for a
Does
wing.
Liberty?
Liberty has room.
Liberty and Poinciana, but we've added a wing to Celebration. We just opened a wing at Harmony. We've done wings at Gateway, plus Gateway has 34 portables that we'd like to try to
You did a wing
relieve,
at
which we're
Harmony
hoping the
too,
new
didn't you?
school's going to relieve.
You did a wing at Harmony.
So is that something you would be willing to consider, is adding a building somewhere in a different part of?
I can honestly tell you that we're already looking at adding a wing to Poinciana High School just to handle more future growth
In
on the
Poinciana.
west side and south side of town.
There's a large development coming in right across from Poinciana High School right now.
You could pretty much right now take a map of Osceola County. I could blindfold you, spin you around, give you a dart, you could throw it, I need a school there. I hate to make it sound so trite, but really the growth has gotten to that point in this county. Understand the school district, the school board, we don't approve one new residential unit. We've got to just deal with the impacts.
Jay, can you address how come the impact fee only covers half of the cost to add a new student seat?
Excuse me?
Can you address why the impact fee only covers half the cost?
Because the impact on an individual housing unit is calculated based on the cost of the student station and the impact. So for instance, let's say you've got a residential unit and it generates 0.48 students is what the calculation is, and it costs you $22,000 or $23,000 to build a student station. Well, the impact on that unit's 0.48 of that $23,000. That's why it's 10.2, 10.6, whatever. It's based on the impact for that unit. Now, that's the impact fee, I think, for all units. I mean, there's a higher per unit number on a single-family home versus a multifamily, which is a townhouse, condo, or apartment. And then you've got mobile homes, which is even lower, but that's why. Does that answer your question?
Well, fair question, we just don't, the impact fee doesn't cover the cost of the students.
It hasn't
Right.
caught up with times yet.
You're not generating enough students to pay for a whole school. That's,
Well, when you said if it is proportional, if you build 3,000 units, you should be able to afford a 3,000 unit high school.
1,500 unit student station high
After
school.
all 3,000 kids arrive, then you
Right.
can, yes.
Right, and you got
Total impact fee.
and you've got to have half the students before, for a school district, not a charter school. For a school district to build a school, elementary, middle, high school, K-8, whatever it is, we've got to have half the population ready to go in before we build the school. We've got to be able to justify it with whomever in Tallahassee that we've got the population. So there's compliance issues that we've got that frankly charter operators don't have to play by, which is not a knock on one or the other, just the reality. That's the hand we're dealt.
But you're saying though, it is accurate that over time, it should cover the impact.
Theoretically. But you get the money after the COs, and then there's a study every 3 years to true up what those numbers are. So it's a fluid, movable target. Theoretically, you're right, but not everything on paper works right in reality, though.
Because if we're getting the full impact fee up front, we should have all the money we need to go.
That's what I'm trying to understand.
Well,
you don't get it.
But the developer's saying we need to add 1,300 units, and they're going to prepay all the impact fee.
They're willing
I just
to.
heard it's not enough to build a school to handle students from 1,300 units.
Correct.
So why is that?
Well, because he's going to
Only
generate
generating.
enough for his 400 and something seats, so you have your cafeteria, your administration, your gym, your
So is
lobby.
that not included in the per seat cost?
The real question, answer your question, the sweet spot, there's something called, I'm going to give a little bit of education, Tom. Something called EF.
Can I let her finish and then we can go? She had a great
But
start.
theoretically, you would need, if we wouldn't build a 400-seat school, so there's still, we need the rest of the school built to break, it's a break even.
So you need a bigger development. You need enough houses.
3,000 units is the sweet spot.
Right. So you need 3,000 units to justify one contiguous school that the impact fees.
And to illustrate it, there's something called, which I was trying to explain to you, called an EFBD, which is an Educational Facility Benefit District, the equivalent of a CDD, a taxing district, specifically for a school. According to the previous CFO from the school district, a guy named Bill Collins, the sweet spot is between 3,000 and about 3,300 units is what you need to fund it. So like Flora Ridge, Bella Lago, those are EFBDs. And the advantage, number one, there's a source of funding you can encumber. But number two, anybody who lives in that development, their child, or if they live in that house, is guaranteed a seat at that school. That's the benefit also.
We addressed a little bit of that the last meeting. We talked a
Yeah,
little bit about
we had looked at, we worked with staff and NHA's request.
We looked at that.
It just didn't pay out.
But it didn't pay out.
Because the Island Village growth, and even with the additional growth, even with the build-out growth, you don't meet that. You don't
There
meet
wasn't
that
enough
sweet
numbers, the numbers didn't work.
Okay, can we move to option 3?
Yes, please.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, ma'am.
It's just a question. It's about the Celebration High School and the makeup, because I'm a little confused now. My understanding is that Celebration High School basically is 30% Celebration residents.
Kids.
Kids, right. But the other 70%, I thought most of them chose to come there, but now I'm hearing no.
They're zoned there.
They're all zoned there?
You've got a magnet program there called an IB program.
Right.
Where you're getting kids from an attendance zone which would comprise Liberty and Poinciana High School. If they qualify and they're accepted, then they will be provided transportation there for that if you're in that program. Now, in addition to that, there is a wider attendance zone also. I don't know the exact boundaries off the top of my head that fill the rest of those student stations.
So those are zoned.
Those are zoned in along with the celebration kids. That's the home zone school for the celebration kids. Now, growth is coming. I mean, as Four Corners more growth comes out of the ground in Four Corners, you're going to see more of those student stations occupied probably by students from there and fewer from Poinciana, just because, to the point that my staff made, we're talking about building wings at Poinciana High School, et cetera, because we know we got, there's not an area we don't have to accommodate for growth. We're doing the best we can.
And what's the breakdown on the IB program in terms of what percentage is celebration, 1% percentages? Nobody knows, okay.
Why would, I'm not sure why.
Thanks, Eileen. Let's go to number 3. This idea is to build a new middle school someplace else in Celebration, but not on the K-8 campus. We've talked about this, not at length, but enough for me to have said before, it's presumptuous of us to tell the Celebration company to donate another site to this deal.
Oh, go ahead.
But it's got to be an option, and, we can work on the math of how that could or couldn't work later. But the general idea is to put it someplace in town where it doesn't have these other disadvantages with Plan A.
Well, I'll tell you, I mean, and staff and TCC and one of the prior contract purchasers looked at a plan that the school staff put together on Island Village for a middle, on roughly 16 acres. It was very tight, but it did fit.
Can't hear.
You're
very soft.
Sorry.
The mic's not going to help, that's just for the TV, but.
We did look at, the staff put together a plan with a middle school on Island Village, on roughly 16 acres. It was very tight, it did fit, but the cost was beyond what both parties could afford.
Real ballpark.
For middle schools, we $25 to $30 million for a middle school.
Almost triple what
At least double, yeah.
That's with retention offside of the property.
Right.
That gives us a little bit more green space.
So can I ask a question on this? Because it went back to something you said. And this is the dilemma I have. I think residents are going to have this dilemma. So everyone says, we have something special at the K-8 school, okay? And adding numbers to that, and we don't know what that magic number is. You add 50 kids, 200 kids, 500 kids. You don't know where that magic number is if you start losing that specialness. We don't know. We're guessing, right? We don't know. No facts. And we talk about a possible other K-5, K-8 school. Aren't you guaranteeing that you maybe can't hit magic twice, or you can't? I'm not saying it's going to be a bad school. I'm just saying it's going to take probably years to get its feet underneath the ground, as any new enterprise will, right? It's going to take a while. The dynamics will change at some point. Good or bad, I don't know. Do you see what I'm saying?
I've been there, again, I've only been there 10 years.
Only.
And I've seen.
Only.
I've seen a lot of different initiatives come through, federal initiatives
Sure.
come through, and I've seen numbers grow, and we've gotten through it. We've gotten through it. We have quality administration, educators.
So I was just going to ask you that main point. Why? Because I do agree with you. The administration, the teachers, the staff at the schools, the parents, the kids from both inside and outside celebration. So I just kind of want to throw that, and you don't know sometimes in new school, is that gonna, I don't, I'm not saying it won't work, because you'll have just as dedicated people, but
There's two questions you asked, Tom. The first one is, at what point, if you did something to this school, do you lose the quote magic? Which is a fair question. I will say, from a school board member's perspective, the only kind of expansion that I would support that's been discussed is in the event that somehow this building got abandoned by its current landlord, okay? And it became available.
At that point, this building, because of where it is, it used to be the teaching academy, for those of you who don't know, and what it is and where it is geographically, is a K-1 or K-1-2 center. That might work, but I'm not losing anything I've already got here. Now, with that said, though, to your point, this building's not available, so that's really kind of moot.
I don't think it'd be abandoned.
It should be on the list. I didn't say, well, but again, relative to a new endeavor within Celebration, how long would it take for it to get off the ground? I think that's a fair question, but I think Celebration, and again, this is totally subjective. Celebration is different. It is unique, and our kids went to school together. We know this school very well. But knowing the community, knowing Celebration, depending what the other school was, how it was configured, et cetera, and who was running it, I think that you would end up, in my opinion, and I know people may not want to hear this, with two really good schools that are competing with each other, making each other crazy with competition, but it'd be healthy competition, good for everybody. So to your point, I think that what you would get here, maybe it might not be, quote, as warm and fuzzy, because now you got competition, but I think that you'd have two incredibly great schools, whatever those configurations were. That's my opinion.
I think we can talk about that under the charter school.
This is the idea I keep bringing up, so let me make just a summary case here. What the downside of this is that there is one more transition. Another downside is the cost, but that could be mitigated by phasing. It'd be on land where the cost of that land would have to be part of the equation, where it's not on Plan A. What I like about it is, if it's a middle school, it doesn't create one of the other problems we're going to get into with the other alternatives, is where there's the same grade at two different locations and there's an inter-town competition. I don't think we need that. And I like the idea of putting a school in a place where it's designed to be, a place where there's already roads, there's already utilities, there's already plenty of capacity, and it can be designed to be safe. And if it's halfway about between here and high school, that'd be terrific.
And it solves the county, another pro is that it solves the problem, it solves the capacity problem outside.
But that's the $25 to $30 million.
Yes, that's right.
Correct.
Thank you,
That's
Rebecca.
the cost
And I'm
is
talking
on there.
about, I should clarify, this idea of the way that I brought it up is to build a school big enough to solve everybody's problem. Take the impact fee money, convert this campus to a K through 5, eventually. Build a new middle school as big as we need and the county needs. Make it a regional school where bus traffic out on the boulevard wouldn't be a big deal. And let the high school just be what it is basically now. Bill, did you want to jump in? Or maybe anybody else while Bill's walking up?
Come on.
No, I didn't mean it. Oh, that came out.
Come on, Bill.
Sorry, Bill.
Bill, I'm sticking up for you. I just want you to know that.
That was awful. I didn't mean that.
Bill Palea, 1411 Celebration Avenue. Just some reaction. I've been writing notes as you guys have been talking, so it's going to be all over the map.
Used to be a superintendent, by the way.
Rose, I want to applaud her opening comments that she made earlier. The note I wrote is that the goal should be the best educational plan with the money we have available, or whatever the county can bear in terms of tax, because there's a reality part. But I put that first one, I put that educational plan first because that's where it belongs. Okay, this is what we, I'm not talking about pie in the sky, but we think this is a good plan. All right, this is the amount of money. Now, how do we alter that plan with the amount of money? I speak to you in terms of how much of this discussion has been research-based, best practices-based. I'm hearing a lot of numbers, sizes, dollars, bricks, cars. I'm not hearing what's the best plan for the students. You mentioned we're 20 years down the road. Whatever you people decide is going to affect us for the next 20 or 30 years. And when I say us, I mean our kids. So I caution you about making a decision to satisfy the immediate cause, if you will. Do I understand the problems that we're discussing are not going to take place September? This is going to take place over time. All right. So the bucks that are available right now should also be looked at in terms of what could be available 2, 3, 5 years from now. So we could do, this is the plan we want, we could do this piece with the money we have, and the other pieces down the road. I don't know if that's possible. I submit that's something you might want to consider. Someone mentioned, and somebody on the committee might want to make a call to the hospital, that part of the hospital's long-range plans, this is rumor, might include a private school.
Grecian Village?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's owned by the Florida Hospital, right?
You're talking about possibly expanding it, is that what you mean?
Yeah, it's going to go.
That, you know as much as I do now,
Okay.
but it's worth a phone call.
I agree, they're going to expand the grade level.
It's worth a phone call. When, respectfully, when you are talking about a middle school and what I would call a primary school, I would suggest from what I'm hearing here, suggest right now, because I haven't heard all of them, K4, 5, 8. A middle school isn't a place where you put 6th through 8th graders. That's another school. You need a middle school principal who knows middle school philosophy, teachers, counselors. If you have a K4 school, you hire a principal who's steeped in primary education, the teachers likewise, when they get together. That's what I'm talking about in terms of research-based, and what's good for the kids here. Just let me look here, as I said, this educational leaders. Okay, I think the transportation, I would have hoped you would have had that information by now, but size matters. Size does matter, and the gentlemen are correct. Why did they come up? When you come up with about 1,800 thereabouts, because that's research-based. So I can offer French, and I can offer trig, and I can offer this. You have 500 kids, you can't offer them anything. So you need a certain number to give them a good menu in terms of programs. Do not put the 8th graders in the high school. Do your own research, okay? But just recapping, if the problem isn't September, why are you looking to solve it all, like immediately?
Where did September come from?
Well, I meant within the next year. That's all.
The agreement that we have, or that we all live under between the Celebration Company and the school district expires in June. And if we don't have a new agreement, and it was the potential of Island Village happening that was going to be the catalyst for an extended agreement. And the point that we've made the last couple of weeks is if Island Village doesn't happen, the agreement's still going to expire. And the protections for Celebration that are in that agreement expire. So we'd like that agreement to be extended, whether it's because of Island Village or not. So that, I mean, the real risk is, and it's unlikely, but the risk is that because the county has such capacity problems of their own, that our kids might get bussed out of here.
All right, I understand that, but if you have a multi-year plan, that's what I say September. That's not going to happen within the next year.
So we need a new agreement before an extension.
So that almost sounds like we're being held hostage.
That's.
You seem to be going in that direction, Pat.
I just want to make sure we're not.
Is that where we're at? Let me plainly say it.
Here's the deal. I don't think we're held hostage, but there's an agreement that expires that was agreed upon by
I understand
Celebration
that.
Company
Yeah.
and Osceola School
Right.
Board. They both agreed that it would end on that date. So, it would benefit us to go ahead and either extend it or have another thing. So I don't think hostage is the right word.
There is some urgency around this, but there's no panic. There's no need to recommend something that is substandard. There was also, as Clyde pointed out, there was a widespread misperception in the community that this deal was on the 1 yard line and about to happen. We've been corrected, that's not, I mean, it was in the works, and they've been working on it for a year or so, but it was still in draft, the plan is still conceptual. We just, while we've got some momentum and energy and brain power focused on this, let's keep going, let's keep this thing going, but nobody's got a gun to our head, schedule-wise.
The only urgency would be the planning time that it takes to construct a facility, and on what location, site preparedness, and everything that goes into that. That takes time.
Yeah, Rhonda, I'm sorry, I keep.
But the plan-
On that, it takes about 18 months to build a middle
My understanding
school.
is we want to get a school open by August of 2018 is my
Yes, we
understanding.
need 18 months.
So there is a little bit of, yeah.
I'm not talking about not having a plan.
Spring, we're gonna
I'm
be
talking
here.
about having a plan, but the whole thing doesn't get implemented immediately.
Understood.
May I ask a question too? If we took Tom's idea, which is the middle school over on the boulevard and a regional school, right? We don't have enough money. That's a big bake sale,
Correct.
right? So my next question is that when we keep talking about all the growth that we're anticipating on the other side of I-4, don't they also have to put in impact money and stuff?
Yes.
They're not willing to prepay.
But West Side DRI
But
has,
they
they
don't
have
have
an
to prepay?
agreement,
No.
and that is the West Side
They're
School.
not offering a prepayment. They don't
She's
have,
asking on
they're
the
not trying to
side.
sell a development predicated upon having a public school facility. Island Village, they're trying to sell a development predicated upon having a public school solution. The other developers are not as proactive, and quite frankly, some are more proactive. I mean, they're trying to get out ahead of it for their development purposes and to make sure they've got a solution. But other places in the county, development comes out of the ground and, I mean, literally, we would be building schools years ago. You'd look at the site plan and the conversation would be, where are we putting the portables? I mean, that was just the follow-up conversation. So in this instance, we are a little bit ahead, but unless I'm wrong, I mean, everybody's been telling me, we gotta have a plan to have a school come out of the ground August 2018. Unless I'm missing something, that's the finish line.
But there will be more impact fees coming, you're just saying they won't be prepaid.
Correct. And in this case, under certain scenarios, we don't need a prepayment for certain things. There is a plan available that a prepayment's not required, and if we don't take the prepayment, we may get more than 12.3 million because those impact fees then are not being prepaid, and the impact fee could be adjusted up with a new study, so that 12.3, if we don't take it up front, could be 13 or 14 million.
So just to combine some of the comments, one of the ways that this idea might work is to take the impact fee money, buy the site, avoid the cost of the wetland impacts, build what you can with that money, and then start phasing the rest over time.
It has to have a magic number to be solved.
From a public school construction financial perspective, that's very.
Middle school, it has 1,000, is that what you were saying?
Because you got to build all the core first
I
anyways.
can get
which
you
is the
those
most
numbers. The
expensive.
state has a recommended elementary, middle, and high school, and like Tom said, the high school's between 18 and 2,000.
Right.
I know the elementary's around 9, but I don't know right offhand what the middle school is, but I can send you an email that has that number.
Just put not enough money.
To your point, but Tom, to your point, I mean, you got to a conclusion very quickly, the right way, but to your point relative to all this, that is one of the beauties relative to charters, is they're not bound by a lot of this stuff. And they got their own money. I mean, there's a lot, there's downsides, there's upsides, but from a financial perspective, there's a lot of upside.
So, are we moving on to charter school, or we're going to stay?
Anything more on number 3?
Rose mentioned a couple of points about a new middle school, which was that it had lots of educational kind of possibilities.
You could offer more programs.
Okay.
More programs.
Should be a true middle school.
Yeah.
You know, better middle school sports teams too.
What you want?
I don't know.
Facilities in itself and the.
I'll let you guys decide if this is a pro or a con, but it'll split your community. It'll go elementary in one location and middle school in another. So is that a pro or a con? I don't know.
Yeah, let's talk about that for a minute. I think that's okay.
I do
mean,
too.
it's one more transition, which is a con. But I think what is worse is having the same grade in two different locations.
So 2 K8
My
you don't
opinion.
favor, but you'd be okay with a K5, 6, 8.
I would. Again, not speaking for the
The
community.
the other point also, Con, is there's not enough, there's not land. Nobody's offering land. I mean, it costs more to build, but you've got to buy land, too.
Yet.
And I think also if
Okay.
you're gonna have, everyone basically inside Celebration, if it goes where the land a little bit is, everyone would end up being bused to the middle school,
Within Celebration.
within Celebration.
Right.
Where now.
But if you can plan accordingly, you can have the trade.
No, it's a fair point, but think about it.
There's very little celebration busing, inside Celebration.
Just to the high school.
Right,
No,
so
but-
this will bring on a new era of basically, at some point, every Celebration student will end up being bused within Celebration
Yeah.
Middle School.
Dan, I'd say more busing than Plan A, less busing than a middle school in Island Village.
Agreed.
Okay. All right. Mr.
Would
Wheeler?
that be a 5 through 8 middle school?
I don't know. Undetermined, TBD, to be determined, unknown.
Okay, let's move on to number 4. We do have a strong advocate present who wants to talk about this option.
Saves us $12.3 million in impact fees, we don't have to use any money.
Okay.
All we need is the land donated, that's it.
So somebody else's money.
So there's a quote that Jay made, and I kind of, Todd, I'm kind of going to you on this one. And his quote was, "Developers trying to solidify a public school solution." So if the developer is trying to solidify a public school solution, is the charter school on the table for the developer to prepay the impact fees or not?
As I said before, I mean, we're still trying to understand exactly what the charter school solution means. I was not on that call, Jay, with you several weeks ago. But we are trying to figure out.
Can't hear you, I'm sorry.
Sorry, we are trying to figure out, what exactly that means. I think this is helpful for all of us.
Okay.
But in keeping with Celebration, the concept of Celebration, it is public schools as
So,
a
Jay,
partial solution.
a lot of the
solution.
audience, folks on TV, folks who will see this on replay, don't really understand what a charter school is. You don't have to have charter school
I'll do it in 2
101, but
minutes.
maybe back up a
Sure.
little bit.
Charter schools, first off, there's been a push for quite some time to privatize public education. Charter schools are public schools that operate outside of public school districts. In Osceola County, we've been very charter friendly because we need the capacity, we need student stations. These are public schools, kids go there, they get the same assessments that happen in regular county public schools throughout the state. So if there's a reading, an FCAT, or FSA, AP exams, whatever it is, they got to take the same assessments. In many cases, charter schools outperform traditional public schools. They don't have to build to the same standards a traditional public school has to build to. You can zone kids to a charter school, provided you offer them another option, because it is a school of choice. There is precedent for that. But these are public schools, tuition-free. Now, they can require parents to do things we can't do. For instance, if you want to send your son or daughter to a charter school, they can say to you, you have to volunteer this many hours this year, or you have to donate this much money instead of volunteering this many hours, and parents can say yes or no to it. We can't do that. If you're zoned to attend Kissimmee Elementary, Celebration K-8, West Side, you come in, we got a seat for your son and daughter, and we've got to accept them because you're in that attendance zone. Charter schools, they serve a purpose, they serve a solution. I think that it provides healthy competition and real choice for parents, and I think that, quite frankly, we're lucky. We've got a lot of charter schools in Osceola County, and ones that don't perform, I pull in front of the school board. I hold them accountable. We pulled the charter from one recently that got 2 Fs. We didn't want to do it. We wanted that school to be successful, but it wasn't, and we had to do that. At the same time,
There is a charter operator with a long tradition and history of performing in Osceola County and throughout the country that I would trust to come into Celebration, and which you all may want to consider. If you do it, you got to do it before your December 21st. Well, I don't know, maybe they would come over Christmas. Maybe let them come and give a presentation. See what kind of schools they build, see what kind of programs they get, see what kind of academic results they get. Nobody is going to be satisfied with any schools in Celebration that aren't a top-performing school. And that's a given, and including myself. So I hope that answers your question, Tom, and is a good explanation.
Maybe just the basics, Jay. So it's privately owned.
Not always. They can be owned by a not-for-profit or public agency, but most of them, many of the real successful ones where they own 5, 10, 15, 20 or more are privately owned, and they are professional at it. That's what they do.
For profit?
Some are, some aren't. As long as they're performing.
You have one of mine.
Let me explain how I feel about charter schools. So let's just get this out on the table. I am pro-good schools. Students where kids are flourishing and performing, that's a good school. I don't care if it's a parochial school. I don't care if it's a private school. I don't care if it's a charter school. I don't care if it's a traditional public school. A school the kids are doing poorly, that's a bad school. I don't care, again, who runs it. A good school is a good school, a bad school is a bad school. Yes, I've got one in mind that I would trust enough to do it here. They run Four Corners. John Bushy worked for them. He took over Four Corners Charter School, and it was on a roller coaster. He made it a perennial A school. He took over some other charter schools from this company that were not doing well. He made them perennial A schools. We've got one that I feel very comfortable that has the financial wherewithal and the expertise to do it. And
they're for-profit or not-for-profit?
The one I want in mind is a for-profit company. And
Where do they get their funding from?
I don't know. Wall Street.
They
Wall
get
Street.
public school.
They get through public.
No, they get okay. They get FTE. I'm sorry.
They pull FTEs from the public school to go to the charter school.
No, they don't. They pull FTEs for the students that sit at student stations, just like we do. They get 95%. If a student is sitting at a desk in a charter school or traditional public school, there's money that follows that student. They get 95% of that FTE, that's called FTE, full-time equivalent. The other 5% goes to the school district. So they're actually operating on less money than the public schools get for that student. That's where they're getting funding for their operations. Now, for the construction, they go to the bond markets for the most part. They've got the capacity to borrow money. They've been doing it successfully.
Okay.
How does it work if, in your opinion, Jay, so the idea that you are favoring is to build a charter school in Island Village that would take up the 10 acres that you have set aside, and it would reduce some amenities that you have in Island Village, correct? Could you tell us what we lose if we went that direction?
The current proposal for Island Village, if a school doesn't go down there, would be for ball fields and potentially a competition-size pool facility. The developer who was under contract with us had already begun talking with CROA about a recreation program for that land.
And with a new school out there, you'd get ball fields and a gym, with an interlocal agreement that said that the community has access to, provided the school's not using it, and they'd also do an agreement with the county as well.
The charter school, that would.
That this one would, already talk to them. Well, they don't have to, but they wouldn't get in without it.
So,
Susan, you getting all this?
Well, what level of control does the school district have over what the charter school offers? How does that?
On the front, okay, technically nothing. In this instance, we could pretty much dictate. I've already talked to the CEO. I want it to be the first STEMA school in the country: science, technology, engineering, arts, math, and athletics. I've talked to them about that. We could dictate a lot with them in this instance because they'd want to come in here and we want them to perform. Also, they'd have to get a B within the first 2 years, within the first 5 years, back-to-back A's within the first 5 years. Otherwise, another charter operator can come in and operate it.
So that hits my biggest concern about that one, because I think it slices and dices and makes a big gamble for our kids. That's what was stated. If they don't do well, I personally trust the Osceola County school system. I mean, they've taught my kids very, very well. They've had good years and bad years, and the teachers have been excellent. The program has been excellent. And if the school dips, the administration as well as the entire school board entity jumps behind these schools. That it doesn't do, we'll go ahead and get somebody else. That seems to be a little bit of a gamble.
Yeah.
Yeah, that seems to be too much of a gamble. The one other thing, too, is father-in-law lives near Tapestry, near the Loop. Big development, building a lot of homes. If you go on the Tapestry website, it's a nice building. It's a rectangular building, and there's flat fields around it and parking. I was just surprised to see bulletproof glass in the lobby, and that's not a bad area, that doesn't. Maybe I haven't been to enough schools, but I haven't seen that in the other areas and the other public school systems. And I also think there is no guarantee. It does not satisfy the number of student stations that is going to be required, because they can always opt out of that charter school and then go to the public school, and what's going to happen. That $12.9 million or 12.3 or whatever it is going to be spent somewhere else, and we're going to be right back where we are, saying, what are we going to do? So those are my concerns.
If they don't opt for charter, then where do they go?
There's a couple things with regards to discussing the quality of education that I have a concern with. The first one is, all of the teachers at Celebration and the high school, they have a specific educational requirement that they have to meet because it is a public school. The charter school does not have to meet that. Oftentimes, they don't meet that.
Charter Schools USA has board-certified teachers in all the classrooms.
Doesn't a charter school mean, the charter is a contract between the school and the school district about how it's
Yeah,
to be managed?
what we do is, right, we approve the charter, but to Vanessa's point, she's right, they don't have to have certifications. This one company in particular, though, does have board-certified teachers. When they took over Four Corners Charter School, there were teachers that people loved that weren't board-certified, and they said, we're not going to keep them. And they didn't, and now they're performing better than they were.
So for the notes, can we just say it's all about the contract?
Correct.
Well, the flip side of that, though, if you think about the benefits of a public school education or being an employee of the public school is you have full benefits, you have pension, you're typically paid higher than your parochial and your charter schools. My understanding is the people that typically end up going to work for charter schools generally it's because they can't get a job in the public schools.
That's what we've seen.
They operate for less money, and
Sorry,
in many
Bill,
cases, they
come on,
outperform
please.
public schools.
I think,
In Osceola County, they have.
Vanessa, the benefit, though, what we have is that we lose from that is we have teachers who are in town that are residents.
Can't take it anymore?
Good night.
No, I have a lot of homework.
Good answer. Sorry.
They should have used that.
Sorry, I went to
Yeah, as Bill's actually in education, so you might be able to pull some.
Well, even something a little closer. I worked 2 years with the district putting together a charter school, and was president of the board for 3 years. Worked closely with Jay and some of his colleagues in putting that together. And there definitely is a place for charter school. Again, I go back to what I said earlier. Do you guys know the research on charter schools?
I've done some, yeah.
And?
Actually, a lot of the recent studies that I've read suggested that, especially one in Arizona this year, suggested that overall, charter schools tended to be less successful than traditional public schools. But it depends on the charter school.
The jury's out, in other words. There's no proof that they're bad and no proof that they're good as a group. So to that extent, it's, what should I say, crapshoot. The one we had, I thought, was successful. Most of them aim at a specific need in the district, either reading. The one we had was computer. Some schools go in, they go for the more able students. That could have an effect on your high school. It could be a brain drain. They pull kids out of that school that are more able. But Jay, 3 of the comments you made while you were talking about them. You said on one, we had one that wasn't good, we pulled their charter.
Right.
Okay. You said Mr. Bushy went in and saved a couple of schools. Well, what does that mean? I mean, we can't have a Mr. Bushy, a fireman, going in, resurrecting schools. And if you said, well, if they're not successful, we'll pull their charter.
Right.
The kids. They have to pay over 2 years.
They stayed at Four Corners, we got them a better principal, a better operator. That's what happened.
But those kids were without a good education for those 2 years.
No,
You
they
can't-
weren't. They were without a good education when we threw the charter up. When the new charter operator came in, it went up exponentially.
Let me understand that. If it's
There are
privately
good
owned,
charter schools, no
I
doubt.
mean, how do you do that, Jay?
Yeah, sir, what's the question, sir?
If the building, if the property is owned by the charter company, how do you, and you pull their charter, how do you?
Somebody else will take it over and take over the debt.
They
That's
gotta
a-
buy 'em out.
that- Somebody, or take over the note. So that's what they did out in Poinciana with.
Or you have an empty building in the middle of Highland Village.
Well, we won't have an empty building in Osceola County.
Just practically, but contractually, they don't have to sell it.
No, what you do is you put in the deed restrictions, it's got to maintain itself as a public school for 30, 40 years, et cetera.
I have
something
one
like that.
question for Mr. Galea. One of the things you mentioned about a charter school was usually they have a purpose. From what you-
Usually.
So what you heard tonight, what is the purpose of this charter school?
You'll have to ask the gentleman. I don't know
Science,
what
technology,
conversation.
engineering, arts, math,
I mean,
athletics.
say again, I'm sorry.
Science, technology, science, technology, engineering, arts, math, and athletics,
Grades, what grades?
K through 8.
K through 8? Yeah, you would have a brain drain.
Yeah, I
I
think,
know of the research that charter schools out.
And Osceola, they don't outperform the Celebration K-8 school.
They don't in Arizona.
So why would you
And they don't
choose
in
a new
Arizona.
school versus, and then you're,
Because they can afford to build it. You're going to come up with the money to build a regular school?
Okay, we've got a couple folks in the audience who are anxious to get up. We'll have our opportunity. Alex, I think you were first.
Alex Carius. Real quick, it probably adds to the pluses and minuses of the charter school. A public school or public K through 8 school is zoned that all the kids in that school zone get to have the education at that school. Is that correct? Like it is. A charter school, if a charter school would go into Island Village, are all the people around or in Island Village guaranteed to go into that school?
Yes.
Yes?
They
I
don't
thought a charter school
No,
could pick with it.
they couldn't go, we wouldn't allow a charter school to go in an area where they don't have to give a preference to the geography. That's why they're getting the opportunity.
You mentioned preference. I'm saying if you would put a high school.
You could zone, you can't zone kids exclusively to a charter school because it is a school of choice. You've got to give them a second choice. Now, to your point, if you have 1,100 student stations at that school, 1,500 student stations at this school, you've got 2,600 student stations between both schools. We could accommodate this community and then some between 2,600 student stations. And then, however, to your point, if there is not room at this school, and the Celebration, and there's a charter school, and they just opt not to go to that, we'd have to give them a third choice of a traditional public school, which would be out of Celebration. So there is not a perfect solution.
so what you're saying is that the kids that are moving into Island Village would actually, their primary zone would not be the Celebration K-8, they would be someplace else.
Their third zone,
Be the Allen Village School.
but the third zone could be West.
It could be West Side, could be Reedy Creek, yeah, unknown.
Right, but it wouldn't be, if they chose not to do the charter school, their home zone school
Might
would.
not be the K, it depends if
Right.
there's not capacity at the K-8, then right, they'd have to go outside of Celebration, correct.
So we need to add to that the school, if a charter school, the kid surrounding the charter school would not be 100% able to go to that school.
Yes, they would be able.
No.
Yes, that would be part of the contract. They've got to set aside so many seats for the population of that development.
But if all those seats are picked up, you just said they could go to any other school.
If those seats are not, if they just opt not to go there, that's the question you asked, would they be zoned for that school? Yes, however, they'd have to have a second choice. It's a public school. They have to have a choice. It's a school of choice.
A lot of individual conversations going
Let's
on
word
here.
that the right way so it comes out the correct way of a plus and a minus.
Okay, can we phrase this in such a way to answer Alex's question? Is it that if you buy a house in Island Village, you can go to the charter school?
Yes.
Is that what? what
The first preference would be Island Village, second would be Celebration at Large.
Okay.
Are
No,
you
no.
guaranteed to go to that school?
No, you don't have to go there.
You don't have to, no. The
Yeah.
parent might decide not to. That's a family decision. If the family decides not to, it's like a family doesn't send their kids to school here. They can send their
So
kids.
conceivably, there could be a situation where 1,100 kids or whatever opt not to go from Island Village to the local charter and would prefer to go to Celebration.
I'll tell you what, I'll take that action all day. I'll take that bet all day long.
Do you think that is one possibility?
It's
even if
a
not
very
right?
remote possibility. Anything, yes, it's a very extremely remote, but yes.
There's a risk.
Just wanted to clarify.
But Jay, there is a percentage that will opt out, so playing the odds.
You know, let me tell you.
Without being already at-
Let me tell you a story about that.
K-8.
When we opened up West Side K-8, okay, West Side K-8 opened up, brand new school. I had dozens, not a few, dozens of parents from Celebration K-8 saying, I want to send my kids to West Side K-8, what can I do? Why do you want to send your kids there? It's brand new. I'm like, you don't want to send your kids there. But it's brand, I mean, I had one mom curse me over the phone because I was telling her not that she shouldn't send her kid there. There's something about brand new. I don't know what it is or why, and I'm not telling you that it's wrong, but there's something about brand new. People see it's brand new, shiny new, et cetera, that attracts people. And I'm not telling you it's wrong, but I experienced it firsthand myself. Celebration, not one or two, dozens of moms and dads who wanted to opt for West Side K-8 because it was brand. They didn't care it was outside Celebration. All they knew was brand new. That was what they wanted.
But going back to my original thought, you know, you have to play the percentage that some people will opt out of charter school. Now, if, say, in JAG, you know, sitting here with the Celebration Company, and we're here for CROA, and representing the rest of the community, some of the people with Island Village.
I represent the community too.
Right, but Island Village, if they don't go to Island Village, they couldn't go to the downtown Celebration.
Depends, because you have people from downtown opting to go there. I mean, it's not a one-way street. You're going to have people who see shiny and new, and they say, oh, I got 2,600 student stations between the
If you
two.
let me finish.
Go ahead.
If you let me finish, all right, but you'd have to tell the people in Island Village that your first choice, if this is full, they're being bussed out of Celebration.
If there's not room, or if there's not room at the two
You wouldn't
schools.
affect, say, Artisan or North Village and saying, hey, by the way, you're the furthest away, so you will be bussed. You wouldn't affect the rest of the community for Island.
Jay, you were also saying
I
that.
don't wait, rephrase it, you just.
Well, being that I'm in North Village, I'm always concerned that I'm being the furthest out, I will be bussed out.
Easy in, easy.
No, I won't.
Easy in, easy out. It's good for that, but not good for school. If I get easy in.
No, I'm not changing the attendance
So
on.
that's what I'm saying.
But that's
If
not
set
you
up a
that
charter
decides
school,
that, Jay. There's.
You gotta play
I
the
think
odds
the
that
sentence
some
is
people will
2002,
opt out of
so.
charter school because they just don't feel.
Okay.
And
Go
I
ahead.
believe you also said, though, that the charter schools could put restrictions on parents. You will volunteer, you will do.
They can. We, you know, one of the beauty things about setting up something new like this is there's things that we could probably dictate in if we so chose to. But what I would suggest, to be honest, and you may, you know, I don't know how you feel about it one way or the other, is let someone come in who knows what they're talking about actually do a presentation, see what they've done, and see what kind of programs they've got. Meet educators. You know, that's the simplest thing. I mean, there's a reason why. You know, you've got cities of Chicago, cities of Indianapolis have charter operators taking over their schools voluntarily. I mean, so it's not like, they're not the devil.
And they haven't done really well, like in New Orleans. I mean, I've
New Orleans is a
New Orleans.
really bad example.
Yeah.
And New Orleans was doing horrible before the charters came in also.
Yeah.
Okay,
Mr. Phelps
okay.
was going to make a comment.
Tom Phelps, please.
And to Brian's point is that that is our concern too. I mean, we're definitely not opposed to a charter school concept, but we're concerned that it's not going to provide the relief that we need. It's a gamble. I mean, it is. If we can ensure that students would indeed take that option and go to charter, then hey, yep, we'll jump on board.
Okay.
But we can't make a guarantee that they will. And if they do opt out of the charter and go to the K-8 school, which is a high probability because, you know, you're a successful
It's a
school.
consistent A-rated school.
We don't have the capacity at the school, which is the whole reason why we're here.
Well, one more point relative to the charters. In Lake County, they zone kids to a charter school. They've given them a second choice, and over 98% of the kids who were zoned to that charter are going to it, and it wouldn't have the amenities this school does not have the amenities this school would be planned to have either. So there is a precedent where you got 98% opting in.
What school is that, Jay?
Four Corners Charter School.
That's in Lake County.
No, that's in Osceola County, but it was built in conjunction with Lake County.
Okay, everyone, this is fascinating. We are over our time.
Good. Let's go home and watch football.
And we're just about out of gas, but any more audience comments? Anybody just got to get something off your chest? Okay, thank you. Let's go around. Clyde, anything else?
Oh, thank you for having us.
Okay, well, no, thank you for coming. Rhonda? Tom?
Thank you.
Bill?
I'm good.
Todd, anything else?
Good.
Right. Dan?
Just
Do we want a motion? Sorry, I'm
I'm
sorry.
just gonna do it.
You're going to motion to invite the charter school, please?
Anything else?
Just I want to thank them again. They're very helpful.
So one thing from me to your question, how do you feel about inviting Jay's charter school operator friend to come talk to us?
Let them give a presentation, let them show you what all is involved.
Maybe a suggestion?
Limited?
How about we get through the rest of this
Yes, yeah.
next time? And so 2 meetings from now.
I don't know if they'll be, you're talking about it during Christmas, so I don't know what their availability will be.
Well, Tom, what I would suggest is because it's really good for the whole community here, we are thinking of town hall. Maybe after we get through our things, the operator part of the town hall meeting, where we open it up to the full community.
That's a good point. The way that I,
For their personal safety.
yeah, the way that I thought about it, though, Brian, is at the town hall, we're ready to make our recommendation. We do make our recommendation at the town hall. And by that point, we haven't heard.
But then James might tell you, we're battling against the holidays.
Yeah, I don't know,
Well,
I
we
mean,
can do it-
maybe
well-
January 4th, but the 21st and 20th, I can't speak for their schedules the 21st and 28th, because like, these people are going to be off, and I don't expect them to come to these meetings
As
either.
an alternative, we do it the first thing in our next meeting while we're still on this topic.
I'll see if they're available, and that's a week from today, I don't know what their availability is.
Any objections?
No, I think information's helpful.
I don't think there's any objection, it's just the timing.
Well, I don't, and I'll be in communication with Tom, yeah, I mean,
Okay, how about, would you guys feel comfortable, I'll take this up with Jay, we'll contact him, if we can work it out, that we invite him next time?
But they'd have to be 3, too,
I would say it's fine.
well, there's two pieces. You want them to first show the kind of facilities they will build, that's number one, and then the programs they would have. So relative to it, maybe they can do it in 20. I would say 30 minutes is probably more realistic, and I know that your meetings don't go, ad nauseum infinitum, obviously, because Tom is kind enough to cut it off now. But the point is, I don't know if, in fairness, you got to give them 20, 30 minutes. Then there's going to be Q&A, people are going to have questions. I'm just
Let
thinking.
me ask this. So the next meeting, you've got it scheduled to start at 7, and I can't remember if there was a,
I think we still have a facility issue, don't we?
okay.
Do
I was
we
thinking
have
if
a
we started.
place?
Aren't you here?
We're right here for
I
all
thought you were-
right.
We're gonna
Right,
have the
right, right,
Corolla
right.
meeting prior.
Yeah, we can't start earlier because there's conflict with this room.
Yeah, we can't start.
Yeah, the only, one thing I was saying is just because we're talking about the charter school is, if charter school is an idea, there is one company, but if Celebration were to make a value for a charter school, we should be seeking out the best charter schools. And I'm not saying this is the wrong one. By the way, this could be the very right one. But at the end of the day is, if we're going to do this, we should say we want a charter, because we talked about private schools, and the private schools won't get us, because no matter what, Osceola County still has to put enough rooms, right? So at the end of the day is, maybe this is, instead of the private school, this is, but if that's an idea for us, a charter school is one of them, we should be seeking out the best charter schools in the entire country, and not, I'm not saying that Jay's, it could very well be the right person, but if we're going to do it, we put out the name Celebration, we talk about the history, we should have applications coming out of Yin Yang for charter schools to come to us, as opposed to the other way.
Great point. So how about in the conversations that Jay and I will have with this company, we'll characterize it as this is an opportunity. This is not a yes or no kind of thing. So that's all I had. Rebecca, you got anything else?
No, I think that's fine. But I think it would be great if we could talk about all of the other options before we jump straight into a full consideration of charter schools. So, and maybe touch.
It's the timing, you make a good point, but it's a question of timing.
But I don't know that the charter school is the pressure of time. It's the general issue.
No, but you want to get through this, and you're talking about doing it over Christmas, that's the catch.
Yeah, but I think if it's a charter school conversation, it can happen.
For them to come in and present,
you're talking about pulling their resources, they may not be.
We'll invite them if they want to come.
This-
they'll come. Tom, anything else?
No, I'm good.
Yeah.
The other thing I was going to ask for is, can we get revised numbers? I heard that we were kind of reworking that.
There's one matrix that I didn't get to, I know you did, but. there'll be more.
I can send on what I did to Tom, what I sent off to Tom.
Jay, anything else in mind?
Thank you all for your participation. Your
Yes,
public
I do.
service is to be commended. Enjoy your families over the holidays, but you will see me next week, and I know Clarence Thacker from the school board will also be here. This is an advertised meeting for us, so any board members can come who want to now.
Susan?
Yes.
Yes. Rose, anything else?
No, thank you very much.
Okay, we're adjourned.
I've got two of the people that have talked real quick.
It's okay, I mean, I just, it's, I want to get home. Join school, we're going to be high school. Middle school, we're going to be elementary.